Hello, everyone, and welcome to the California Department of Education's Literacy Knowledge Building video series. In this video, Dr. Sue Sears will discuss how to support adolescent learners who are struggling to read. Before we begin, let's go over a brief bit of background on the Literacy Knowledge video series. This is a series of videos on critical topics in literacy birth through grade 12. It was developed by the California Department of Education and literacy experts in the state literacy team, and it is complementary to the work of the Federal Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grants. You can learn more about the CLSD grants by going to the California Department of Education's website and searching for CLSD. The purpose of this video series is to provide guidance and resources on critical topics in literacy, to support the work of the CLSD grants, and to build coherence between California's literacy guidance documents, standards, and frameworks and how they all support literacy. A major objective of the CLSD grants is to bring coherence between California's guiding documents, some of which you see here, like the California Preschool Learning Foundations, the Infant Toddler Learning and Development Foundations, the Practitioner's Guide for Educating English Learners with Disabilities, the Dyslexia Guidelines, and the California English Learner Roadmap Policy. Other content area standards and frameworks support literacy as well. The videos produced in this series will illustrate the connections between all of these documents and also explain how the documents themselves support literacy development for our students. Videos will be produced over the course of the CLSD grant period. To be informed when new videos are posted, join the CLSD listserv by sending a blank email to join-california-literacy-states-developments-program at mlist.cde.ca.gov. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Sears.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to the California Department of Education for the opportunity to address the topic, teaching adolescent learners who are struggling to read. My comments are organized in three general areas. First, I wanted to talk briefly about the challenges in working with secondary students. Second, I wanted to share with you a federally funded, comprehensive, multi-component reading intervention program. And third, present results from a model demonstration project where that reading intervention program was implemented. I want to acknowledge those who have worked with me on this project. First, Dr. Vanessa Goodwin, a colleague of mine at California State University, Northridge. Lindsay Young, the teacher at our pilot site for our model demonstration project, and our colleague, Dr. Sally Spencer. In working with adolescents, we know that we are confronted with a myriad of both academic and behavioral challenges. With a long history of reading and spelling difficulties, these learners' decoding skills are often painfully slow and effortful. The less fluent their decoding skills, unfortunately, the fewer number of unknown words they are exposed to. And consequently, their acquisition of academic vocabulary knowledge suffers, as does their comprehension of the complex informational texts they are expected to summarize and from which they are expected to make inferences. Help may or may not arrive. And as a result, adolescents who are struggling to read often lack motivation to read. They don't enjoy reading, and in fact, they often avoid reading altogether, and really, why shouldn't they? They've never experienced the pleasure of losing oneself in a book or being fascinated by how genetics shape families. They and we, as their teachers, are confronted with what Keith Stanovich refers to as the Matthew effect, from the biblical verse Matthew 25:29. And it reads, "For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have abundance. but from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And the translation to that is, of course, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. In the reading world, the rich, those who read well, read more and become even better readers. We know nothing improves performance like practice. While the poor, those who struggle with reading, read less, and the gap between them and what is expected of them, particularly in middle and high school, widens. The most recent NAEP results present a sobering picture for California. 70% of eighth graders were assessed at reading below proficient level. Of those, 32% were assessed at reading below basic level, fully 1/3 of eighth graders. And these students are at a much greater risk for dropping out of high school, long-term employment, and incarceration. And in fact, some studies suggest that 70% of those living in prisons, those incarcerated, have reading levels that fall below the proficient level. So I don't think there's any argument that there is a tremendous and an urgent need to address the challenges of secondary students who are struggling to read and learning to read. And my concern is that if we don't do it at secondary school, if not then, when will it occur? By the time students reach secondary school, what makes addressing this need so challenging is that their reading at that point really requires an integration of multiple processes. They must be able to decode accurately and automatically. They must be able to build academic vocabulary knowledge. They must be able to understand sentence structure, and they must be able to both extract and construct meaning from text. So what they need is a comprehensive multi-component instructional model. Scarborough's reading rope provides a visual depiction of what that multi-component program might look like. It suggested that skilled reading in this model is the result of a combination of language comprehension, background knowledge, vocabulary, language structures, verbal reasoning, literacy knowledge, which become increasingly strategic over time, and word recognition skills and components, phonological awareness, decoding, and sight vocabulary, which become increasingly automatic over time.
The slide states that students with decoding difficulties have challenges with phonological awareness, phonics, sight word reading, and efficient word identification skills. And students with language comprehension difficulties have challenges with the ability to understand language, to derive meaning from individual and related multiple spoken and signed sentences, vocabulary, background knowledge, language structures, and verbal reasoning. The slide also notes that students can also have difficulty with both decoding and language comprehension.
Preceding Scarborough's model by about 15 years was another model of reading, probably familiar with, the simple view of reading. And what this suggests is that reading comprehension, R, is equal to the product of decoding and language comprehension, D and LC or C. It's a multiplicative array, mathematical formula. It's not additive. And what that means is that if D is 0 or if LC is 0, R is 0. So both decoding and language comprehension are necessary, and neither alone is sufficient for reading to occur. The value of this model is also in that it helps us understand the challenges of those students who are struggling to read. Is it decoding? Is it comprehension? Is it a combination of both? Incredibly simplistic, but has provided the framework for the work that we've been doing at Cal State Northridge. The Literate Adolescents Intervention Program, and you can access this program on the website lainterventionproject.com, is divided into two components, decoding and comprehension, just like the simple view. The curriculum is designed specifically for older readers, for adolescents. All the curriculum materials you need to implement the program are on the website, and the curriculum is appropriate for reading interventionists and both general and special education teachers. The decoding materials include a strategy for breaking down multisyllable words, practice doing so using a decoding app word builder, and fluency materials. The comprehension materials focus on vocabulary development, including morphology instruction, comprehension strategy instruction, reciprocal teaching, and activities for increasing the amount of time that adolescents spend reading text. The decoding strategy is that of Anita Archer, where she suggests that in order to break down those big multisyllable words and teach students this strategy, circle the prefix, those commonly occurring letters at the beginning of a word. Circle the suffix, commonly occurring letters at the end of a word. Underline the remaining vowels. Divide the word into parts, making sure that each part has a vowel or a vowel combination. Say and then blend the word. And a piece that we have also added is if that word is not familiar to you, then try a different vowel sound, because the vowel sounds are the tricky sounds of the language or of the printed, of our print. Word Builder is an online decoding app which is freely available and accessible on the Apple app and Google Play stores and on Amazon. It includes a comprehensive scope and sequence of prefixes, suffixes, and vowel patterns, which are practiced in grade level multisyllable words. Students break down, build, and spell these words to mastery, and Word Builder is more fully explained and demonstrated, highlighted in another of this series webinars. The fluency materials are designed to complement the scope and sequence of Word Builder. They include choral reading and an approach unique to the Literate Adolescents Intervention Program, which we've called strategic rereading. Strategic rereading really, I think, sits in a space between decoding and comprehension, and it suggests to readers that, you know what, you may not have to be able to pronounce every single word in a passage in order to be able to understand it. So read through a passage, underline words you're not able to decode, ask yourself at the end, did I get it? Do I understand it? Can I answer who, what, where, when, and why? And if I can, move on to the next passage. If I can't, go back and take a look at those words I've underlined and apply my decoding strategy. Comprehension materials include resources for building vocabulary, including some suggestions on which words to teach, which is, I think, as a teacher, always one of our greatest challenges. PowerPoints for vocabulary and morphology instruction, texts from which those vocabulary words were selected. The site also supports explicit comprehension strategy instruction, focusing on 4 comprehension strategies, very familiar: summarizing, predicting, clarifying, and questioning. And these 4 comprehension strategies comprise and are taught in preparation for reciprocal teaching. Reciprocal teaching has been around for a very long time. It's a small group, student-led instructional activity, which involves students, importantly, in assuming the role of teacher. As in a small group, one student is responsible for summarizing, one student is responsible for predicting, one student is responsible for clarifying, and another for questioning a piece of text. One of the strengths of this website, I think, is the materials that our pilot teacher, Lindsay Young, and our colleague, Sally Spencer, developed to scaffold reciprocal teaching. It's not an easy strategy to teach, but it can be very powerful if done well. We chose it not only for its potential to increase reading comprehension, but because research suggests that it enhances students' engagement with text, motivation to read, and self-regulation. So with that, it's important to say that the desire to motivate adolescent learners was as critical to us, if perhaps even not more critical, than the components of the program. And so for that reason, the website only includes age-appropriate reading materials and activities, and works to support student independence and accountability. We initiated individual student-led conferences and a book club as a part of the program. All of the components I've been talking about can be implemented individually. For example, if you wanted to engage in reciprocal teaching, you could download the reciprocal teaching materials and you could embed them into your class schedule, your current class schedule. If you wanted to take a look at Word Builder, you could access the app and you can include those materials as a part of an already existing curriculum. But what we also did was we combined these components into 2 periods of reading intervention. One period focused on decoding and one period focused on comprehension. And that constituted a reading intervention program in a high school. Those schedules can be accessed at www.lainterventionproject.com/decoding-class. The comprehension class schedule can be accessed at www.lainterventionproject.com/comprehension-class. And so now I want to go to the website and show you what those schedules look like. So here is the LA Intervention Project website. Homepage, an overview with some information on how to use the website, core principles, and some research and resources. Instructional materials. And here you'll find materials in support of each of those components that I was talking about. The decoding strategy, word builder, fluency, vocabulary instruction, morphology instruction, comprehension, strategy instruction, and reciprocal teaching. Again, materials can be downloaded for each of these components and integrated into your current program. We also have, though, intervention schedules. If you decided that what you wanted to do was to implement a full period of decoding support. So it might look like this, or it did look like this in our model demonstration project. 10 minutes of a warm-up, and here is the link to the warm-up materials, to the decoding strategy guidelines, and a decoding poster. 40 minutes of skill practice in small groups in which we're using word builder, game-based practice, and teaching word parts. Repeated reading for fluency and comprehension, choral reading activities, fluency texts, and this sort of bridge to comprehension strategic rereading. And then every other week, reflective learning conferences, and once a month Beyond the Book Club. This is a 60-minute schedule. There's also one for 90 minutes. The comprehension intervention schedule looks like this for the first 5 weeks. Teaching the individual comprehension strategies, summarizing, clarifying, questioning, predicting. And here are the materials to do so. A warm-up, a class reading, modified reciprocal teaching. And then following those first 5 weeks, moving on to what becomes the schedule for the rest of the academic year: vocabulary instruction, comprehension instruction, including vocabulary instruction, class reading in preparation for reciprocal teaching, and then the end of the unit activities. So let me go back and talk a little bit about how we implemented the full complement of instructional strategies in a Literate Adolescents Intervention Model Demonstration Project. It was federally funded from 2015 to 2019. We did have one no-cost extension year this last year. We developed the program at a pilot site in collaboration with the teacher there, Lindsay Young, and that ran from 2015 to 2017. We extended the program to 2 replication sites in 2017, 2019. It's really important to note that the intervention program was implemented in 2 credit-bearing classes. English 9, which all students had to take, 9th grade English, and strategic literacy, which was an elective and also satisfied an EL requirement. English 9 focused on comprehension, strategic literacy focused on decoding. Instruction was delivered by district classroom teachers, not by researchers, not by teaching assistants, but by district classroom teachers hired by the district. And we provided them professional development and coaching. And the reading outcome data that I'm going to share with you today was collected on over 100 students during at pilot and replication sites during the years 2017 to 2019.
On the slide, School 1 has 3% Asian students, 28% Black, 50% Hispanic, 15% white, 12% English language learner, 58% free and reduced price lunch with an N size of 2,879. School 2 has 1% Asian students, 1% Black, 96% Hispanic, 2% white, 15% English language learner, 77% free and reduced price lunch with an N size of 2,370. And School 3 has less than 1% Asian students, 2% Black, 94% Hispanic, 2% white, 13% English language learners, 72% free and reduced price lunch with an N size of 2,065.
The 3 sites in which we worked were large, high-need high schools in an urban school district. As you can see, there's a large percentage of the students qualified for the free and reduced lunch program. The majority of the population was comprised of students of color. The EL percentages that you see on the slides was for the entire school, but in the intervention classes, the percentage was closer to 50%. We assessed beginning and ending year reading proficiency using a variety of measures, but I'm just going to share the reading comprehension subtest from the Gray oral reading test. In year 3, 56 students across the 3 sites, we obtained significant gains from beginning of year to end of year with a statistical measure of 0.38 effect size. And what that means is that we made a little over a third of a standard deviation. It gained over a little a third of a standard deviation. I'd like to see higher, but if you look at their grade equivalency gains, these students entered 9th grade with around a 3rd grade reading level, which means they had been gaining about a third of a year of reading each year they were in school. In this particular year, they gained over a grade, 1.06 grade level. In year 4, again, significant gains from beginning of year to end of year on the scaled scores on the Gray oral reading comprehension test, but not quite double, but close to double the effect size. So now we're beginning to make a difference. If you think of a bell-shaped curve with 100 as the average and the standard deviation says 15 points, you're looking at close to a 10-point gain here. And the grade equivalency gain went from beginning mid-3rd grade to mid-end 4th grade, almost a year and a half gain, grade level gain in their reading comprehension scores. I wanted to say too that the gains varied across schools, with 2 of the schools showing gains of nearly 2 years. And so these students at these schools began beginning of 3rd grade and ended at a 0.52 or a 0.529 grade level. When you move kids, adolescent 9th graders, from reading from a 3rd grade level to a 5th grade level, you've made a real practical difference in the kinds of texts that they can access. And it's important to probably mention too, that those schools where students made the most gains, the teachers really adhered to the essential elements of the program, and they implemented those programs with high levels of quality. So always, no matter the components of the curriculum, the teacher makes a difference. So what we learn, what do we think we've learned from this? Well, I think we can say that an intensive reading intervention program can be provided to secondary students without jeopardizing completion of high school graduation requirements. And that is always a concern. How do we do this when they need credits to graduate? I think we could say that with support, secondary classroom teachers can implement an intensive reading intervention program. It takes some time to become comfortable with a program, but it can certainly be done and be done well. And finally, and most importantly, intensive reading intervention at the secondary level can make a difference for adolescent learners who are struggling to read. It is simply not too late. So thank you for listening. Please email me, Sue, SUE.Sears, SEARS @CSUN.edu. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for viewing Teaching Adolescents Who Are Struggling to Read. Access the discussion questions to deepen your learning with your colleagues. And make sure to watch the next video in the series, Supporting Elementary Students with Dyslexia. Thank you.